Hello and welcome once again to White Lotus of Light. This is the educational series, and today I'm talking about the upcoming eclipse season, which begins this coming Tuesday, October 25th at 7 a.m. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And the reason I'm using Philadelphia, Pennsylvania as my marker is because I'm going to be talking about the way the eclipse impacts the United States in particular. The reason for the focus on the United States is A, I live here, so it's important to me on a personal material level, and B, the United States has been, since the end of World War II, more or less the center of the planet in many, many ways. And the fate of the United States very much informs the fate of the rest of the world. I'm just going to take a quick moment before leaping into the meat of this to let my viewers know that the second Mark Stavish conversation video will be up soon on egregores. I also have filmed with Philip Jimenez, the Black Nobility series, episode 3, that is also filmed and ready to be edited. I'm getting this in because it's time sensitive. I've been very busy recently, very grateful for the abundance with a lot of Vedic astrology charts for clients, and also I've been teaching a lot of theurgic angelic magic, teaching people how to improve their lives with angelic magic. And so that's been taking up a lot of my time, and I haven't been able to keep up with my normal pace of getting out weekly content. I just am phenomenally busy with a lot of irons in the fire. And by the way, I just want to take a moment to say, if you enjoy the content on this channel, if you could please like is always nice. Subscribe is even better if you haven't already subscribed. And of course, if you're able to share this video with people who you think would find it interesting and helpful, that would be the absolute best thing you can do to help grow the channel. I'm almost to the point to where I have 1,000 subscribers. And when I get to that point, I'll be able to put more of my time into the channel and to creating content, because I'll be able to do things like super chats. So I can have a little bit of a income stream off this channel, which has been primarily a labor of love. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into it. So I want to real quick put up on the screen here. Let's see, I believe this is the right one. It's hard for me to tell in miniature. Yes. Okay. So this right here is a this is using astro.com to create a chart. I'm using the sidereal zodiac. I'm also using whole signs, and the reason for that is because I am going to be addressing some of the outer planets, which are Western planets, because they're in particular Uranus is so insanely important in this upcoming eclipse, especially in the lunar part of the eclipse. So we're going to be touching on that, but this is actually focused primarily on sidereal Vedic astrology, or Jyotish, the science of light. And so that system uses whole signs along with a whole sign house system, along with the sidereal zodiac rather than the tropical zodiac. So with that in mind, this outer ring, which you can see here with the red planets, that is where the planets were at the moment of the signing of the Declaration of Independence on the 4th of July, 1776. I have previously come up with a time of 5:05 p.m. as the time which seems to best fit certain historical events. This is a highly contentious piece of astrology here, but it sure is fascinating for what it shows in this eclipse cycle that's coming up. And so it's just what I went with. This is not where the buck stops, but it is what I believe is the more or less the chart of the United States at the moment of the founding. Okay, so that's all these red planets. That's sort of the natal chart for the United States. Now, since we're looking here at a solar eclipse, a partial solar eclipse, which takes place on Tuesday, October 25th, 2022, at approximately 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm using that because we're trying to match it with Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, with the sort of the birthplace of the United States, right? So if you look here, you'll see that we have the sun, the moon, Venus, which actually shows up a bit in the Nakshatras, which I'll get to in a minute, or the lunar mansions where this is occurring. Venus shows up in both charts, interestingly. It's also interesting because today Venus is behind the sun, so it's hidden in the underworld and is actually recently went perfect with the Venus star, which is a fairly rare event. Other astrologers are covering this. Jamie Lee Goldstein, I highly recommend her work on this specifically. She'll have a video up on that on her site, and I highly recommend her work in general, but in particular on the Venus cycle. So we got this whole big cluster here, right? And you'll see that it deposits itself here in the 12th house for the natal chart of the United States, meaning that this eclipse is happening in the 12th natal chart, or 12th house of the natal chart. It's also happening in the Nakshatra, or lunar mansion of Swati in Libra, in the 12th house, and that is the asterism or chart where the sun is at its most debilitated. So you have a solar eclipse when the sun is at its maximum point of weakness. That is pretty interesting. And you'll notice that the house of Leo that the sun rules is the 10th house, which is, among other things, the military. So to have the military at its greatest moment of weakness, and you have this solar eclipse where perhaps something goes wrong on a military or security level for the United States. And it's happening here in the 12th house. And the 12th house in Vedic astrology rules secret enemies, waste, and expenditure. It's also happening on a Tuesday, which is ruled by Mars. And if you look, we got Mars conjunct Mars here, right? So the transiting Mars is conjunct the natal Mars, and that's happening in the 8th house of the hidden secrets, the occult, esoteric. And meanwhile, all this action around the eclipse energy is going in the 12th house of hidden enemies, expenditures, and debts. Could there be a externally caused stock market crash on that day? I have been predicting for a while that one is very likely. Could it happen as soon as this Tuesday? Yes, it could. And in fact, I'd even take it a step further and say that it's likely that if it's to the benefit of the hidden enemies of the United States, right? Not United States, the globalist super trooper, global cop, but the United States is in the interests of the people and citizens of the United States. So there's elements in the national security state that are globalist in nature that are within the United States. And so it could be those elements of that globalist security complex that pull this off, or it could be something that starts in Europe and comes over to the United States, because I would argue that Davos is the greatest hidden, not so hidden nowadays, but they do most of their machinations in secret. They leave a lot of the Mein Kampf on the coffee table kind of plans out in the open, like the Great Reset, but they also do a lot of stuff behind the scenes. It could also be that China or Russia does it. I don't think so, because I think you would see that more in the 6th house over here of open known enemies, right? The Europeans are supposedly our friends. That's why I look at it. Dr. Joseph Farrell talks a lot about, and so does one of my guests, Walter Bosley. They talk a lot about it, about the post-war Nazi International. That group would be considered a hidden enemy. And there might be other similar non-state actors, of which Davos is certainly that way, but there may be more concentrated, more ideologically pure, right? Not that their ideology is good, but that they have a singular ideology, such as the Nazi International, that would fall under that non-state actor, which would include groups like the Venetian Black Nobility that I talk about a lot. Or segments of that, since there's clearly a schism there. But all of those would fall under the 12th house of secret enemies. And I think that we're going to have some kind of event, which could be hidden, right? That'll probably be like a debt crisis related event because it's the 12th house of debts, among other things. It could be something dying. It could be the beginning of the death of the dollar. You could see something break in the bond market in the United States. That is a theory. The weakness of the 10th house, there could be some kind of military related issue that happens, perhaps something in Ukraine that pulls the United States deeper into that quagmire. To me, Ukraine isn't the United States and NATO baiting in Russia. It's actually Russia and the US both getting baited in by these non-state actors like Davos. So both Russia and the United States can have their version of the 70s Afghanistan trap that the USSR fell into, that Zbigniew Brzezinski and other American forces put into place. So this is the opener. And this then opens a 2-week portal of, it's sometimes called the Dragon's Maw or the Dragon's Mouth, between the solar and lunar eclipse that happens shortly thereafter. And so now I'm going to switch gears real quick. And we're going to, actually, let me do this. We're going to look at the, eclipse for the lunar side of things. And I'm just going to check my notes because there may be one more thing I want to do to tie off the solar eclipse. Let me check real quick. I do want to read real quick. Part of the reason I think of the stock market is because the planetary ruler, the primary ruler of the asterism or nakshatra of Swati, which I'm hoping people are seeing right now, this page. I think so. I'm not sure if they saw my notes there. It's fine if they did. Rahu is the primary ruler of this asterism. Okay, so Rahu's happening over here in the 6th house of illness and diseases and open enemies. So that's interesting, directly opposite where we have this eclipse taking place. Oh, this is actually the lunar eclipse. So let me go back. My apologies. Just going to stop this share because I'm not sure whether it's sharing the right thing because I can't actually see that. Okay, so hopefully this is it. So this isn't still this solar eclipse. We're just tying this off. So this here is ruled by the planet Rahu, or rather the north node of the moon, Rahu. And Rahu is represented by this endlessly hungry beheaded dragon. And I'm not going to go into the cosmology of Rahu right now, but suffice to say it's endless hunger and endless greed. And so that's the energy of where this is taking place here in Libra. And that's why I think that the endless greed of financial powers, which could include the Nazi International because they have a significant banking wing, but I think is much more likely to fall into place with that Davos and or Venetian Black Nobility group, or any other financial actors that are hidden enemies of the United States. So then I'm going to stop the share here. I'm going to go back in and we're going to switch gears and we're going to look now at the lunar eclipse, which is extremely significant. Now you'll notice the lunar eclipse, the day of the eclipse is 6 a.m. East Coast time on November 8th, 2022, day of the midterm election. And to me, this is the far more significant of the two because it's a total lunar eclipse and it caps off this energy. And now I want to point out that this is where it's happening. And it's here in the 6th house. It falls into the 6th house of the United States, which is open enemies, disease and debt. So again, debts, so like a crash of some sort in the bond market or the stock market of the United States seems extremely likely to me. And if that were to happen, it looks like it would either be overtly done by the enemies of the United States, the open enemies of the United States, which would be Russia and China, most likely, right? Or if something happened, it would be blamed on the open enemies of the United States. Those darn Chinese, those darn Russians. Could something happen before the polls open that prevents an election from happening? And that's blamed on the open enemies of the United States. And you'll notice that the 6th house is in Aries, so Aries is very angry and volatile. And then you have This where the moon is getting conjunct, it's by Rahu, greed and materialism, and it's conjunct Uranus, which is the planet of sudden shocking changes, like that are just out of the blue. And you have it here conjunct Rahu, the north node, which is also the direction we're moving, something that's critical to happen. And it's very like material driven, whatever it is. So I want to read real quick the symbol for the nakshatra of Bharati, where this is, or Bharani, excuse me, Bharani, which is at the end of Aries. It's basically from 1320 Aries to 2640 Aries. Listen to this. It'll seem unrelated at first, but give it time. The main symbol of this asterism is a vagina, the female sexual organ. And in fact, all the female sexual reproductive organs can be seen as the symbols of the nakshatra, of this nakshatra. In all ancient cultures, these organs as symbols were seen to represent the fertility aspect of nature. In the Egyptian civilization, the vagina is symbolically represented as the buckle of Isis and is seen as the doorway between different worlds. The Vedic point of view also ascribes birth, death, transformation, and regeneration to the feminine reproductive symbols. They are also seen to represent restraint, caution, jealousy, secrecy, forbearance, struggle, sacrifice, catharsis, that's interesting, as you'll see, sexuality, nurturing, and maternal love. Bharani therefore carries all the above-mentioned attributes. Since the soul finds its entry from the astral plane to the physical world of the living through the female sex organ, it's not very hard to see the doorway connotation associated with this symbolism. Pardon me. As we shall discover later, Yama, the Lord of Death, and one of the 8 doorkeepers between the physical and other worlds, is the ruling deity of this nakshatra. The womb, as we know, carries the new life in the form of the fetus for several months before it finally finds itself manifested in the world. In the same way, Bharani, I'm going to actually take it off the share for a second because I want you to see my facial expression here. In the same way, Bharani allows things to brew on subtle planes. Excuse me, I lost my place there. Bharani allows things to brew on subtle planes before they suddenly take outer material forms. In the case of childbirth, it is usually very hard to predict which day the water is going to break. Now, wait for this. The same is the case with revolutions, which usually brew within the hearts and minds of people for a while before suddenly erupting. The same is applicable to death as well. This makes Bharani an unpredictable nakshatra which operates in hidden ways and revels in secrecy. A boat is the alternative symbol of this nakshatra. It again symbolizes transportation between different planes and realms of existence. Bharani is thus a nakshatra directly related to the process of birth, death, and regeneration, at least on the earthly plane of existence. It also mentions how Kali, the dark and destructive form of Pavarti, is one of the 3 main feminine deities upholding our universe, just like Yama, the Lord of Death, that this nakshatra is ruled by. Kali is also considered a deity to be feared, right? Because I talk about the Kali Yuga all the time on this channel. You should definitely watch those videos if you haven't. Kali's function, however, is just to kill the demons within and without. People forget that about Kali. Her form has to be terrifying because the entities she deals with are themselves cruel and fierce. Her involvement with this nakshatra implies that Bharani is a sort of battlefield between the opposing qualities of nature. It is here within the distinction between right and wrong, good and bad, godly and demonic. It is here where the distinction between right and wrong, good and bad, godly and demonic is made. What an incredible thing for this very huge American election. The process of uprooting the negative side begins. Bharani deals with extremes and in the process becomes the most extreme among the nakshatras. So I feel pretty confident in saying that we are going to see some very, very, very significant developments during this 2-week period between Tuesday, the 25th of October, right, at 7 a.m., and then Tuesday, the 8th of November, Election Day in the United States, when the total lunar eclipse is at its maximum at just a minute before 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So both of those happen in the morning on the day, and they happen on the day of Mars, which is often a day of violence. So false flags, especially on the solar eclipse, where the military is at its weakest, to where the military would be most likely to make mistakes. Could there be a false flag where some rogue element of the military, deep in the globalist controlled, right, because it's happening in the 12th house of hidden enemies, could there be some rogue faction in the military gets up to no good there in a moment of weakness? Could it be that our military gets pulled into some kind of quagmire, such as Ukraine or maybe Taiwan, or something like that? Ukraine would be my guess. There's been a lot of rumblings about a false flag. There's been a lot of rumblings about the potential use of nuclear weapons. By the way, for what it's worth, the angels have told me that there's 0% chance that there'll be a nuclear holocaust. None. Absolutely none. Limited exchange? Possible. Rogue elements of non-state actors, hidden enemies, perhaps, making use of this stuff to draw in the military, which would be weak and be in a moment of weakness and make weak decisions. That's real possible. A collapse in the bond market or the stock market followed by the bond market, because almost certainly any mega collapse in the stock market would be met with furious money printing. That's something that I expect will happen fairly soon, because they want to do the central bank digital currency in June of 2023. That's not going to work, I don't think. There's also a switch over to the ISO 20022 crypto system, with the banks starting to move off of the SWIFT system and into the Ripple Stellar Lumens system of transnational sort of banking stuff. I'm going to go ahead and say that that is my major points in my analysis. Oh, just to wrap up, I think I already hit that, like, revolutionary fervor. Do we see a red wave, an unbeatable red wave? Because a revolution, of course, is a turning against the dominant paradigm, and currently in American politics, everything is controlled by the Democrats except for the Supreme Court. And that's not something that can really change right now. So what's up for grabs is the House and the Senate. I don't think the Senate can flip. I just don't think that's possible. But could the House go ragingly to the Republicans? Maybe. Could something happen and then they say the election needs to be delayed? Maybe. It's in the house of disease. Could there be some nonsense around some kind of disease, whether it's monkeypox or the trillionth C variant, could be. Again, open enemies, whatever would happen on the November 8th, it seems that it would be blamed on open enemies of the United States, which in this case would be probably Russia or China. So could we see, again, some kind of collapse in the stock market or bond market on the day of the election? Is that possible? That seems less likely to me, because generally big financial collapses happen in September and October, and there's astrological reasons I'm not going to go into here for that. It's the harvest period of time, for starters. There's certain things with certain calendars that matters. I'm not going to go into it here. One thing I will say is I'm going to be doing a video very soon on the Luciferian versus Malachian factions, and in particular the end of the Kali Yuga in 2025. and some of the incredible astrology that's happening then, and then some of the steganography and some people I suspect are in the Luciferian faction I talk about among the elites versus the Malachian faction among the elites. That I've found some really explosive material on that. That video, I'm not sure when I'm going to get that out because I'm still working on the Mark Stavish, and which is an excellent, excellent conversation, and then the Black Nobility 3. I want to get it out maybe for the week of Halloween, which I guess is next week. I don't know whether I'm going to be able to get that out in time. I got a bunch of videos in the hopper, but I'm really excited for this one that talks about the end of the Kali Yuga around March 31st of 2025, which is my birthday. Yeah, so if you have any questions, go ahead and put them below. If you got this far, please hit like and subscribe if you're not subscribed, and please share this with anyone you think it's handy or helpful. Thank you so much, and until next time, bye.